Danez Smith is here and wants to read us some poems. This is a wonderful turnout. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Matt Donovan. I'm the director of the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center. I am so thrilled to welcome Danez Smith back to our campus. Danez was one of the very first poets I invited when I started at Smith College in 2018. And tonight feels like an incredibly special event for a number of reasons to have them back here. First and foremost, here in America, in this moment of reckless cruelty, relentless racism, grotesque ineptitude, and lies that devalue language on a daily basis, I have no doubt that all of us could use a pretty heavy dose of Danez right now. I feel really, really fortunate not only that we get to hear their work tonight, but that we are able to come together and experience it together as a community. Also, I am so happy that Tiana Clark will be in conversation with Danez following their reading. Exactly. Tiana was also one of the very first poets I invited to Smith College, my first semester here. And just a few years later, in 2021, Tiana became our Conkling Poet in Residence. And we have just been so tremendously fortunate to have Tiana be part of our community on campus for the last several years. Unfortunately, though, tonight marks the last official event for Tiana as our Conkling Poet. And this summer, she'll be moving to Texas as a visiting professor at Texas State University. Tiana Clark, we are gonna miss you. And don't forget about us back here in Northampton. Can we have a round of applause for Tiana? Yay. So as just a quick aside, since I started at the Poetry Center, we have only had books by two poets walk away from our shelves at the Poetry Center. Those poets are Danez Smith and Tiana Clark. So it's an elite club and high praise in its own way. So here's how tonight will work. Danez will be introduced by Sadie McCrae, a Smith College senior and one of the Poetry Center's core interns. Following the reading, Tiana and Danez will be in conversation together, and then following that discussion, Danez will be signing books right down here at the purple tablecloth. I definitely want to encourage you to purchase one of the blazing books by Danez being sold here tonight. But whether or not you have a book in hand, just feel free to come up and say hello to Danez. I know they'd be really excited and happy to meet you. And now I hope you'll bear with me as I definitely just have a few words of thanks before I turn things over to Sadie. As always, I want to express deep gratitude to the Boutelle-Day Foundation, as well as all of our alums and community members for their donations to the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center. Your generous contributions are what make our programming possible, so thank you so much. I want to thank our campus co-sponsors for this evening's event, which are Africana Studies, the Study of Women, Gender, and Sexuality, the Department of English Language and Literature, and the Smith College Lecture Committee. Some of you may know that today marks the 4th year in which our final reading of the season has been given by a poet who also read earlier in the day to several hundred public school students who came to the same auditorium earlier this morning. This field trip poetry reading event is one of my favorite things that we do at the BDPC, but it also takes an enormous amount, as you can imagine, of work and planning. I want to offer a huge thanks to Jen Blackburn, the Poetry Center's program manager and outreach coordinator, for truly countless hours, not just in planning today's reading, but each and every reading in our series this year. And meanwhile, I also want to thank the intrepid Danez Smith for reading to 600 high schoolers earlier today. I want to thank the Poetry Center's core interns, Sadie McCrae and Kate Hayes, for all their hard work and help with our programming and event publicity this year. I want to thank Downright Productions for providing tonight's audio as well as live streaming our event tonight, and a special welcome to all of you who are joining us online. I want to thank Northampton's own independent bookseller, Broadside Books, and especially the wonderful Roz from Broadside for selling books at all of our events. And in this moment, you know this, right? Independent booksellers are more important than ever, so I hope you'll continue to buy books locally, and I hope you'll consider picking up one of Danez's books if you don't already own one. They're for sale in the back. The Poetry Center also has a table set up in the atrium. Please stop by and pick up some postcards and stickers. And if you're not yet on our mailing list, you'll find QR codes that will allow you to sign up for our e-blasts and information about our upcoming programming. Speaking of which, we have a stellar lineup already planned for our reading series in the fall, when we'll be hosting Melissa Phoebos and Danica Kelly, Keisha Kuipers, Jason Schneiderman, Amma Kojo, and a joint reading with Susan S. Leary and Selma Osatich. I definitely want to mention that Susan Leary is this year's chapbook contest winner from 9 Syllables Press, which is Smith College's own poetry press. And I'm very excited to mention, in case you missed it, that 9 Syllables will be expanding its annual output. And each year, moving forward, we'll be publishing a full-length debut collection by a woman poet over the age of 40, which is the only prize of its kind. And that contest, our first contest, will be judged by none other than Diane Seuss. So if you're interested in learning more, there's a 9 Syllables Press table also in the back just to the left as you exit the auditorium. You can find out information there about everything 9 Syllables Press related. Tonight also marks the last night of my reading contemporary poetry class for the term. English 112 students, it has been such a pleasure to work with you, and I can't thank you enough for all of your exhilarating insights into poetry you offered up through the whole semester. I really felt wildly lucky to work with you. As always, at the end of the night, we'll have the QR codes. They'll be posted on the back doors, and you can just be sure that you sign in and mark your attendance before leaving here. But also, much more importantly, I say unto all of you, Besedu. That's what I have to say to you. And finally, I promise I want to briefly introduce the other speakers for this evening. Tiana Clark is the author of the poetry collection Scorched Earth, which was named a finalist for the National Book Awards in 2025, and I Can't Talk About the Trees Without the Blood. Tiana is the recipient of numerous awards and fellowships, including the Kate Duff's Discovery Award, a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship, and the Amy Lowell Poetry Traveling Scholarship. Her writing has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Poetry Magazine, The Atlantic, The Best American Poetry, and so many other wonderful places. And now, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the amazing Sadie McCrae. Sadie is a senior at Smith, majoring in world literatures and the study of women, gender, and sexuality, as well as pursuing a concentration in poetry. They just finished writing a poetry chapbook about queer and trans archival history, their experience with pursuing gender-affirming care, and their love of Bruce Springsteen. When they're not splashing around the pool on Smith's synchronized swimming team, they are trying to watch as many strange and wonderfully weird movies as they possibly can. Sadie McCrae, the Poetry Center won't be the same without you. You're going to be so dearly missed. Please welcome the there's no podiums. Please welcome Sadie McCrae.
Shorter than Matt. Hi. It is my honor to introduce Danez Smith. In Smith's most recent collection, Bluff, they were tasked with writing poems about what it means to be a Black American within the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic and the murder of George Floyd. What results is a book most concisely summarized as a reckoning. Henry Hicks IV says about Bluff, "I'm not sure that I've come across a collection before, blink first." Bluff is Smith's most transgressive and unflinching collection yet, in both form and meaning, pushing the boundaries of the word, the page, the audience, and Smith himself. In I'm Not Bold, I'm Fucking Traumatized, Smith writes, "I look to form when my heart feels placed in a blender and left to wait to pulse." Form, then, is a way to write when there are too few words to convey historically silenced feelings. Smith transcends this restriction, finding new ways to engage with the page outside of the prescribed lines. In More Hope, a poem about recognizing the importance of the individual and the collective commitment to a better future, this transcendence manifests in the repeated phrase, "I add," literally piling up at the bottom of the page. In the poem Rondo, it means reworking the page entirely. Rondo begins with a vignette about the historically Black neighborhood, chronicling it as a sacred place of, quote, "a little more happiness." In the margins of this first page begins a thick black line around which words from the initial vignette float on the following page dislocated. For the rest of the poem, the line becomes the Interstate 94, which demolished the neighborhood, and the page becomes a map of what is left of Rondo, labeled with the neighborhood's actual street names. The words from the initial vignette are stitched back together as individual poems, filling those streets with Rondo's continued spirit. Smith subverts space in Rondo by reimagining the page, and in doing so, disrupting the boundaries of the poetic form. Bluff itself is a disruption as it reconsiders Smith's public reception. In Stoop poem, they write, "I want to write about my life with my words. The problem is who listening, who editing, who cheers after I kill the children again." They contend with profiting off of the very doom that makes them write and their inability to control the white moderate audience that consumes their poetry. In the Electric Literature interview with Mandana Shafa, Smith says that sometimes the idea of the audience scares me. Sometimes it hands me a righteous responsibility and purpose. In reevaluating their position as a poet, Smith forces the reader to consider their own complacency. And soon, they write, "I am getting away with murder. I know so because I eat well in a heated room." This collection is bravely burdened by the truth of our present, ripe with the political violence and mass genocide that cannot be left out of our poetry. Smith addresses this conflict in their anti-poeticas, where they admit to the harm that their poems have caused. They conclude this series by subverting their initial antis and writing an Ars Poetica. They write, "What I'm sorry for, making poetry into a house of rebuttals, a temple for the false gods of stagnant argument and dead-end feels. Here in these lines, in these rooms, I add my blues and my gospel to the record of now. I offer my scratched golds to the blueprint of possible." Their scratched golds, these pained, unflinching, still hopeful poems, are a part of the creation of a new, freer somewhere. In their words, there is still time for beautiful, urgent change, which means there is still time to make more alive, which means there is still poetry. Right after Smith creates their grave of guilt, they flood it with a new reconsideration. Smith is constantly reworking themselves, publishing their growth in Bluff as a record of how to regain and maintain hope in poetry at a time when this hope can feel futile. Smith's admittance of their and our complacency is a reminder of the necessary reckoning we must all have in order to remain empathetic and ever-growing community members and writers. In Volta, they write, "Now I need a new bravery. I don't want to live a coward's peace." Smith performs this new bravery in Bluff through their constant self-reflection that remains weaponized with hope for a better, braver future. Danez Smith is the author of 4 poetry collections, Insert Boy, Homie, Don't Call Us Dead, and their newest release, Bluff, and the curator of Blues in Stereo, the early works of Langston Hughes. Smith is the recipient of the Forward Prize for Best Collection, the Minnesota Book Award in Poetry, and the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Poetry, and a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, the NAACP Image Award, and the National Book Award for Don't Call Us Dead. They teach at Randolph College MFA program and the Black Youth Healing Arts Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. They live in the Twin Cities with their people. Please join me in welcoming Danez, the reigning queen of the ampersand, amongst so many other things, onto the stage.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing? Good. Thank you so much for that introduction. Sometimes I wish people did bad introductions so there'd be very little to live up to. It'd be like, oh, well, hopefully, only up from here, but now I have to, do a good job. So thank you for that. It's okay. I'll try to live up to it. It's good to be back. Y'all weren't here, but I was in here with 600 high schoolers earlier today. So very different vibe. Y'all are so well behaved. Only right now. Hopefully, we need to get some discipline going on in here later. Okay, cool. It's like whiplash. It's like, whoa, they all grew up. Look at that. But very excited to be here with y'all tonight. It's always, are you really a writer or an academic if you're not in Western Massachusetts at least once every couple of years? So good to be back. Renew my membership. What are we going to do today? Okay, they've asked me to read 40 minutes of poems, which at this point in my life is far too many poems. So we're going to do a smooth 35. And then we're going to have a wonderful conversation. And because I like to talk, it'll be 40. And then we'll talk to Tiana Clark, who's so brilliant. Y'all have had her for so long. Y'all should be sad to be losing her. And then I'll sign some books, and we'll all go home, hopefully better people. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. Also, it's hot in here. Wow. Y'all don't believe in air conditioning in this part of the world, which concerns me. My hotel is so hot, here is so hot, I'm concerned. Gonna start a fund. Okay, I think we'll book in the night with some long poems. One by request, but this other one, which is basically like some reheated nachos, so let's start here. What do you need to know about this poem? It's called Soon. It's two epigraphs or anchors that I was thinking about as I was writing. Is one by Ross Gay, who said in an essay, we were practicing an elsewhere we imagined. I think that's so brilliant. Thinking about how, the future as a destination takes community. And then Terrell Alvin McCraney said in a speech he was giving, just this little bit of language, we were belonging. And I like thinking about belonging as an active verb that happens in community building. And that was so precious to me when I was writing this most recent book, Bluff, and spent a lot of the book in a non-hopeful place. And I think I got to a point where I just wanted to cull some hope, and maybe imagine where we were going, maybe write a little bit of a spell, but also do some necessary damage to capitalism and all the things on the way out. Fuck capitalism. We can clap for that. All right, cool. It's April. We all just paid our taxes. Fuck capitalism. Okay, cool. It is the season. So I'm going to read a couple of sections from this poem called Soon that is hopefully about where we're going and what we're leaving behind. Soon. Somewhere my black can fall off. Somewhere I'm just Keisha with no need for armor, which is love somewhere with an extra R. Somewhere the hard R can't find me. Somewhere love doesn't have to protect me. Somewhere I am loved and defenseless. Somewhere hands on my body mean medicine, ecstasy. Somewhere where the trees hum with wind songs and ripe green sweetness and not a single memory of our weight, twitching or still. Somewhere my black needs no argument, where this skin is not target or document, but a pleasure I share with the eyes and certain tongues. I'm not waiting on negotiation. My Eden is waiting on me to make it. Don't need no nation to agree with me. I need water and soil and sisters fed and a good roof. Don't give a damn whose door you think waits after death needs your help carrying these melons, teaching these babies. What you do in your bed with who is y'all's grown business, but we have to discuss winter and our path through it. Name yourself whatever you need to make it a home, then bring it over here to help plot these and sometimes and reap those yesterdays. I believe you deserve to be alive, and long as it's mutual. Break this bread, pickle these carrots, take these apples to your mama. Your son put a scar on my son's face. It started when they were playing. We should all sit down and work it out. It could save the world if we take time to clear our plates and clear the air. Remember, a scarred son's face, hunger, locked doors in the land. Them are war's parents. Here's my hesitation with paradise. If someone keeps touching the children, where do we send them? If his wife is aubergine around the eyes, what we do with his hands. These tomorrows are carnivorous. How do we square utopia with humanness? No poem or plea or prayer pulled my papa off his woman or got grandma off the floor. Beating his ass did. Then cancer made him too weak to make a fist. What violences do we permit in the new world? What do we do with the old evils when they are just human? What cancers do we remove? Who do we give cancer? What poisons do we swallow to live? Whose dead body is the future's horizon? How many futures? How many bodies? How bloody is Eden's gate? Does it open? Utopia isn't what I'm after. It's Wednesday, uninterrupted. A bulletless semester, hunger that ends in sweetness. After at the end of such a limited want, we could be decogged, unleashed from the performances we wore to eat and not be killed and still be killed. I am sick of the world enough to disassemble it, to thirst the whole road to the next, to seek a next, to trust the path we make by leaving. If the world without the necessity of poverty is utopia, then yeah, I want it. If no one gunned down to please a misinterpretation of another's God, then yeah, I want it. If men build it tomorrow but rule atop it like drunken and sensitive kings, keep it. No kingdom comes without greed. No greed can eat without becoming a vacuum. No vacuum has a limit. Blood and gold and water and blood and gold and no bottom. A blue greed with no abyss. A heart that ends in the shallows. Wars, folks. Wars, lover and son. What is my Eden? Is it mine? Is our Eden the same as mine? Who is us? Is there an Eden between us? What must I give up for us? Is it I? Where is I in Eden? What is my Eden? Is I mine, us, the same as Eden? Who is Eden? Is there an us between Edens? What is I given for us? Is it Eden? Where is Eden between us? What is my I? Is it mine? Are our eyes the same? Whose mind is mine? Is us a we? Is there an I in our we? What us survives into a we? Is I we? Where we Eden? What is my we? Is it us? Is there an Eden in them? Who is them? Is Eden a must? What them's we? I give up. We is us. Them aware I end. Is I them? What is my them? What ain't us in me? What I disrupts my we? Where we Eden, know them in us, know them, know I, know hollow you, know us, a we, where I go to die so I can live, we bound, anchor us. Today, I want somewhere my kids don't write poems about being targets. I hate those poems. I hate my inability to declaw their logics, rebuttals everywhere my babies look. I hate them who planted a dirge in my seed songs now. Chalk outlines where they should be dandelions, prophesying repasses when they should be portal jumpers, somewhere worlds away from here. My babies should be dreaming Neptune's moons, should be running through purple forests under tangerine clouds, whose rain sounds like laughter when it hits the ground. Instead, my babies dream of cops, of stops, of who they could lose in the swirls of red and blue and red. And who was I? What was I doing? Why didn't I stop it when I saw the world creeping into their little minds? Somewhere, my children can write poems about being. without protest, their songs full of stars. We'll stop there. Cool. All righty. Let's read this one. This was mentioned in the intro. I wrote this when I was very fucking tired of grad school. Cool. And I imagine at the end of the school year, we might all have some academic anxieties that we're, very excited to not live amongst and within in the coming months. So let this be your, if you need to say, fuck whatever this semester has been, this is the poem for you, okay? Cool. I'm not bold, I'm fucking traumatized. Ugh. Thought that a lot. All right. Same niggas I write poems for call me faggot and my utopia shrinks. Who do I really mean by we? Two. When you say bravery, I think, what else? Don't we all brave a thing, even just the dark? Through it or deeper, darker still. I talk so loud because I'm trying to find the door. Three. I'm not every nigga. They not all in me. I'm not that damn large. I contain multitudes of little shit that only adds up to a basic me. I know only a tiny percentage of all the black people. When I say black people, what I mean, what I've confirmed in small circles of niggas I know. By niggas I know, I mean niggas I choose, and I choose them all. I really do mean to, but surely there's a list of niggas I'd rather not allow inside my heaven. Absolutely a list of black folks I pray toward hell. 4, like, do black presidents get to go to heaven? Do people who beat their children, or what about people who beat their children to relieve stress? Is the nigga who assaulted me gonna be in Thug Mansion too? How heavy is my stone on his scale? How much and what kinds of violence are allowed within God's love? I know love is some shit I'll never get because my grandma hopes my grandpa is waiting for her in heaven. Wings close into a fist on his back. 5. I have like 4 white friends, maybe a dozen if I'm being generous, and that feels brave enough. You know what I'm talking about. All the little deaths in there loving you, all of them. Read Citizen if you need that lesson. Every teacher those 3 semesters, I got to know a deeper sad, added citizen to the syllabus late. Every one of their white hands handing me what I already read and knew, and they were so amazed. And with Trump, the opportunity to finally write political poems, and it was like they were all just opening their eyes, and all of us once shadows had shapes, proper names. 7. Does it bother you when someone talks about your people as a concept right in front of your face? What does your skin feel like when it's evaporating into theory? Mine, like sugar dissolving in a sleeping mouth, trying to take the tooth with it. 8. The problem with being a poet is the line. But so thin, it's not a line where your history personal becomes your history collective. Some folks in my family don't get that to tell my story. I have to confess theirs. We are not stains in the lives of others, not wind nor flat actors nor tricks of light. We have shapes and noise and make scars and disturb and interrupt and salve and slave and slip so easy from background character to God. You know what? Maybe we do start as wind. 9. My people ain't even my people. Their utopia calls for my death and they dress for the occasion. It's some bullshit. It's impossible. I feel bad for poems. All we expect them to hold. The people in my poems don't agree with my ways. My poems shrink. I look to form when my heart feels placed in a blender and what left to wait to pulse. That's what it feel like when I remember who want me gone and how I love them alive. Cool. Boom. I know we all live in different corners of the internet, but has anybody been watching? That poem made me think about there at the end. There's drama with this comedian named Kev on Stage right now in my corner of the internet because he just said, he's like a Christian comedian. He was like, I think gay people should be allowed. And then all the rest of the Christians were like, ah! And so I'm very much in those feelings right now. Don't allow the gays to gay. Speaking of homophobia, let's do this poem. Should we do a little? Yeah, we'll do a little homophobia, transphobia quartet. Okay, cool. So this first one is the homophobia of the barbershop. Black barbershops, wonderful, complicated spaces of like masculinity and community. My same barber has been cutting my hair since I was 14 years old, which means that he's technically been cutting my hair since I was straight. And I was like, oh, I'm such an old, like, I'm an OG homosexual. I've been in the game for so long. Like, you know, I remember when, like, non-binaries hit the scene type shit, you know. It's true. One day we woke up and it was like, there are days now. We were like, what? Am I one? Cool. Okay. And then basically I've been gay for a long time. But then I realized I had been gay. I had been in the closet at the barbershop. Until one day my barber had Google and my worst fears happened, and yeah, and then whatever. And then I wrote a poem about it. Here it is. It's called Day was the last person I came out to. Why did I long to leave the man I wasn't, uncomplicated beneath your blade? In that brief weekly Mecca, I wanted nothing to mark me but the edge of your sheer, cutting horizon above my brow. And that brief weekly Mecca, oh wait, no, did I already say that part? In that brief weekly Mecca, I wanted nothing to mark me but the edge of your shears, cutting horizon above my brow. Our romance of money and mirrors. We trade coins for beauty and peace in the time-rich forever of this shedding place. The million doors to this heaven we attend to be tapered and grown. I didn't want my facts to become the news, nor the closeness it takes a man to square a man into grace to be soured by desire or God. Or traditions that leave my kind unloved, unhoused, unknown by clippers, raggedy and unbrothered. Day, I wasn't a man, I was your clay, afraid of being banished from your hands. Loose me not from this uncled oasis where I rather be misnamed than uncounted. I curved the men I kissed into vague women in that chair, stretched my life so thin you could cut it with a whisper. I knew the world had sharpened and accrued its jagged disciplines. I knew the world and needed this one place in it, not to be it. But then you found my poems. Then you cut my hair. What? I am not keeping track of time. What time should I be done reading? Around 8-ish? Cool, got it. Let's keep homophobia and transphobia in our intimate spaces Alive and well? No. Let's banish it. Let's do some more poems about it. So, what do I have to say about this poem? It took me 8 years to write this poem because it said a thing that I was like scared to say for a long time. And because of its title, which I was like, ooh, this will make Thanksgiving very interesting. And it did for some years. The title of the poem is Waiting on You to Die So I Can Be Myself. Does anybody in here have a family member that you love very much, but if they were dead, things would be a little bit easier? Great, me as well. And my grandma asked me one day at a Thanksgiving, "You want me to die?" And I had to say, well, no. But I think a part of you had to die in order for our relationship to move forward, right? I think my grandma, lovely woman who I miss so much to this day, right? And she did a thing that a lot of parents do, was like, we were like unconditionally loving each other, right? And then some conditions showed up, and she was like, well, hold up now, I didn't say that. But then even in that like dynamic, she expected me to still give her the unconditional love. And I was just like, well, if yours gets to have conditions now, why doesn't mine, right? If you won't accept the whole of me, why do I still have to perform I love you so much, my grandma, for you? I do love you so much, but it murders me to come see you. So yeah, I wrote this poem. Waiting on you to die so I can be myself. 1,000 years, I can do this one by memory, I think. 1,000 years of daughters, then me. What else could I have learned to be? Girl after giving herself to herself, one long ring-shout name, a monarchy of copper and cold shoulders. The body, too, is a garment. I learned this best from the snake undulating out of her pork rind dress. I crawl out of myself into myself, take refuge where I flee. Once I snatched out my heart like a track and found not a heart but two girls forever playing slide on the porch in my chest. Who knows how they keep time? They must be a single girl, doubled and joined at the hands. I'm stalling. I want to say something without saying it, but there's no time. I'm waiting for a few folks I love dearly to die so I can be myself. Please don't make me say who. Bitch, the garments I'd buy if my baby wasn't alive. If they woke up at their wake, they might not recognize that woman in the front making all that noise. Ooh, Lordy. Okay, maybe a new poem? Shall we do something new? Okay, options. Do you want, not all of them now, you have to wait till next September. Then you can have as many as you want. Okay, you want love poem about lesbians. I feel like if there's ever a time to do that poem, Smith College. All right. So we have lesbians. We have poop jokes and caretaking and like grandmother feelings. Okay. And we have, those are the two options. Okay. Hands for poop jokes and caretaking and maybe tears. Okay. Okay, maybe. It's been good. I might still give y'all that. All right, lesbians. All right, cool. Lesbians it is. All right. Let's get to it. All righty. Don't say I'm not generous. All right, cool. All right, this is going through some edits. I think I liked the old version more, but let's see how the version me and my editor came up with hits in the room. All right, cool. Lesbian time. I'm writing a book about time. All right, lesbian time. I can't tell if it moves like a river or a mountain, the U-Haul by the first Friday, or a decade that feels like a Sunday. Something about lesbians pleases time, makes her brandish her lush tools made from silk and feather, crack the rock for the sweet secret yolk inside to lather y'all with it. So long, I thought love wasn't for me, or I knew it wasn't love if it didn't feel like Angel and Shira, if it didn't seem kissed by the divine, then Juan, who I knew was my husband because it felt like a woman loving into the secret girl who rests next to my heart. I knew my love was for me because he felt like a sister, like the lady after me in the womb who shared a bed with me and plaited my hair at night and was hungry so I could have bread. Oh, when he touched me, all the clocks abandoned sense. The minutes blushed and swelled. When we die, please bring us back, girls. I pray to the muses of love, to the God who took the bone from Adam and made her first revision. Cool. Cool. Lesbians! All right. Do we have time for that one? No. I want to do something funny. Let's do like a love poem that has like a funny inside of it. And then, yeah, okay, cool. And then we'll do the last poem. All right. Sorry, y'all have to see me think on stage. Yuck. Huh? No, we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't. Y'all paid me for this, not for more. Y'all, okay. Cool. Okay, cool. Here we are. All right, boom, boom, boom. No, let's do this one, because a child at dinner didn't know who Luther Vandross was. All right. Do y'all know who Luther Vandross is? Okay, if you, like, gun to your head, could not name a Luther Vandross song, it's fine, but please raise your hand. Oh, wow. I do not believe that children are the future. Okay. No, it's not your fault. We have failed you. After this, I actually kind of want to end this right now and just like play Luther Vandross into this microphone. You must go home and listen to Never Too Much, Bad Boys, which is one of my personal faves, or at least, A House Is Not a Home. Please, just do that for me, and there will be peace between the millennials and the... What are y'all? Are y'all X or Z, Alpha? Y'all are Zs? Zalpha? Look, okay, cool. There'll be peace between us. Okay. Good God. Okay. All right, I wasn't planning on doing this one. I don't even know if this poem is good, but I wrote a poem about Luther Vandross because I was at a very gay party, and then they played some Luther Vandross, which always makes me sad. So if you don't know anything about Luther Vandross, you need to know that it was so clear that this man was a homosexual. Oh, my God. We all knew. And the world and, internalized homophobia and all the things would not allow him to live that life, right? So imagine me, like, shirtless, maybe wearing a little bit of leather and like hearing a Luther Vandross song, and then that's where this is coming from. I know, right? Yeah. Love poem, Luther Vandross. Even sweating in the blue room with these faggots, I break under Luther's want. That loneliness he stretched fist wide across octaves. A queer is still a queer, even if no one is to witness who pulls from him the sounds music can't muscle. I hope someone loved Luther and touched him how he liked. Somewhere, someone has to remember him big and delicate as fairy bone, his unique salt, where a kiss made him growl and how to make doves spill from his lips. Damn, I wish we had seen you loved in the light. I don't know if it was money, your mother, or God who left you in front of cameras, kissed only by the flash. I don't know who waited at your house, if it was a home. Two husbands get off their knees, bust out into the back room to sing your tune. With milky mustaches, they sway together inside your longing. Luther, they bend knees, they milk, they rise from the floor to jig for you. That voice, big enough for all of us to be alive inside. Who was on his knees for you? My uncle, my sister. Who did you bend and crane towards? His neck on your chin or his hand on your chin like a mic, demanding no note but your open mouth and your eyes in his. Luther, we are gathered in the basement of this barbecue joint that leases to some sissies once a month so we can spin under moonlight with lovers and Judies. The girls are fucked up and this mix is so good. Your jeweled need layered over moon-found drums. But sis, my sis, did he love you? Did he give you your roses? Did you allow yourself flowers and to wilt in his arms? Did he exist? Luther, so desperately I need you loved. I grab my man by the face. In his mouth, I moan your name. Cool. Boom. What was I supposed to say? Shout out to Sierra Leone from Big LA. Is that right? Big, there you go. That was your shout out for that poem. Go home and learn who Luther Vandross is. Embarrassing us. You can't be from Big LA no more till you listen to Luther Vandross. Have it fixed by tomorrow. Thank you. All right. Cool. Sorry. You got to evangelize these children for the right reasons. All right. And then last poem. What was your name again? Camille. Me and Camille met in that wonderful little train car coffee shop situation, huh? Camellia? Familiars. That's the name of the place. Oh, okay, yes, we met in Familiars. Obviously, I know what that's called. And I was like, what poem you want read? And they said this one. So we'll read this one as our last poem. This is a afterworld or afterlife that has been imagined for black boys and black men who have been killed by the police, by white supremacists and other avatars of white supremacy. It's a lot of sections, so I'll only read some of them. But yeah, and then we'll have a nice talk. It was so nice to read poems for y'all tonight. Thank y'all. Cool. All right. I'll see you in a couple years. All right, boy. It's true. Summer somewhere. Somewhere, a sun. Below, boys brown as rye. They play the dozens and ball, jump in the air and stay there. Boys become new moons, gum dark on all sides, beg bruise blue water to fly, at least tide, at least spit back a father or two. I won't get started. History is what it is. It knows what it did. Bad dog, bad blood, bad day to be a boy, color of a July well spent. But here, not heaven, not earth. We can't recall our white shirts turned ruby gowns here. There's no language for officer or law, no color to call white. If snow fell, it'd fall black. Please don't call us dead. Call us alive someplace better. We say our own names when we pray. We go out for sweets and come back. This is how we are born. Come morning after we cipher, feast, hoop, we dig a new one from the ground. Take him from his tree box, shake the worms from his braids, and sometimes they'll sing a trap god hymn. What a first breath, and sometimes it's the eyes who lead. Scanning the room for bone flesh men in blue. We say, congrats, you're a boy. Again, we give him a do-rag, a bowl, a second chance. We send him off to wander for a day or ever. Let him pick out his new name. That boy was Trayvon, now called Rain King. That man, Sean, named himself I Do. Oh, the imagination of a newly reborn boy. But most of us just settle on alive. Sometimes a boy is born right out the sky, dropped from a bridge between starshine and clay. One boy showed up, pulled behind a truck, a parade for himself and his red, wet train. Years ago, we plucked brothers from branches, peeled their naps from bark. Sometimes a boy walks into his room, then walks into his new world, still clutching wicked metals. Yes, some boys wade here through their own blood. Does it matter how he got here if we're all here to dance? Grab a boy, spin him around. If he asks for a kiss, kiss him. If he asks where he is, say gone. No need for geography now. We're safe everywhere. Point wherever you please and call it church or home or sweet love. Paradise is a world where everything is sanctuary and nothing is a gun. Here, if it grows, it knows its place in history. Yesterday, a poplar told me of old forests heavy with fruit that I'd call uncle, bursting red pulp and set afire, a harvest of dark wind chimes. Then after I fell, the tree kissed sap into my wounds. Do you know what it's like to live someplace that loves you back? There, I drowned. Back before, once. There, I knew how to swim, but couldn't. There, men stood by shore and watched me blue. There, I was a dead fish, the river's prince. There, I had a face, and then I didn't. There, my mother cried over me, open casket, but I wasn't there. I was here by my own water, singing a song I learned somewhere south of somewhere worse, but that was when direction mattered. Now, everywhere I am is the center of everything. I must be the Lord of something. What was I before? A boy, a son, a warning, a myth. I whistled. Now, I'm the God of whistling. I built my Olympia downstream. And you're not welcome here. Trust the trip will. We earned this paradise by a death we didn't deserve. And I'm sure that there are other here's, a somewhere for every kind of somebody, a heaven of brown girls braiding on golden stoops. But someone prayed we'd rest in peace. And here we are, in peace, whole, all summer. Thank you, Northampton. I appreciate it. Thank y'all. All right. Give us a second. We're going to reset the stage, and we'll be back in a moment.
Hello? Wow. Woo! Can we give another round of applause for the Danez Smith? That was such a brilliant, searing, fantastic, awe-inspiring, cell-rearranging reading. I love every time I get to hear you read.
Thank you.
You're truly remarkable.
That means so much coming from you. Thank you so much.
You are one of my lighthouse poets, so thank you so much.
I'll take it.
Okay, I have so many questions for you, so little time. Also, just my style is I ask really thick, very loaded, like loaded baked potato questions, so, but pick whatever you want out of there. I'm so happy that you read the poem, Waiting on You to Die So I Can Be Myself, because I have a particular question about that poem. There's a really incredible series on Guernica. It's an online literary magazine, and there's a series on there called Backdraft with Ben, is it Burkett? How do you say his last name? Ben Burkett?
Yeah, Ben
And it's a really cool series where he's interviewed incredible poets like Danez, Natasha Trethewey, Carl Phillips, and they show an early draft and then the final draft, and there's this really cool slider where you can kind of go back and forth between the drafts, and you picked this poem for your interview. And in the interview, you said something really fascinating to me. You said, in the early draft, I can see myself avoiding what I was trying to say. And then Ben asks you, how do you know that the title needed to stay the same? And you write, I'm going to skip some parts, but I had to grow as a poet in order to stand up to it. It took me many, many years. When I look at the early draft, it reminds me of who I was. I see the voice from my first book, Insert Boy. It's more performance-minded. I had to learn how to calm down and to understand what patience can do in a lyric. Sometimes you have a truth that you have to do both the living and the reading in order to be able to say it right one day, which is incredible. So my question for you is, can you walk us through that process of your growth as a poet, from recognizing that you were avoiding, there's some avoidance there, like how do you grow from the avoidance to the confession? And then at the same time, how do you toggle knowing that kind of living the life often on the page, right? Because I feel like with my students, sometimes I tell them like some poems have to ferment in darkness, some poems you're not ready to write. You feel that inkling of something, but you need your life and therapy to maybe catch up to the utterance. So how do you know when you reach that point of like, oh, now I'm ready to say, I call it say the damn thing. How do you know when you're ready to have that moment of confession or confrontation? Or how do you know when you're able to access that feeling? And in particular, how was that process of like growth for you to stand up, to kind of have that line of like that break of I'm stalling, and then to perform that break, and then to have the, you know, the utterance, the crucial utterance, what Louise Glick called with Richard Sykin and Crush.
Yeah. I mean, so that poem, Wait Ere You to Die So I Could Be Myself, I think it gets longer every time I talk about it. I feel like at this point I'm saying it took 8 years to write. It might not have took that long. Maybe like 5. But 8 feels spiritually true right now. Anyways, I think I had to grow as a human and as a poet in order to write that poem. The human element, I think, was being able to talk about my own family history while looking or talking about people who I normally would not cast in any type of antagonistic role in the story of my family in unfavorable lights, right? So I think there's a version of my family story to tell where I love everybody, but like my grandfather is the clear villain, right? And everybody else sort of lives in different proximities to that violence and what it does to you. And so in order to write this poem, this was about my grandmother, who was often the recipient of that violence, right? Who has been such a caretaker for me, and I think I didn't know how to hold space for both my love and adoration for somebody and my critique of somebody at the same time quite yet. I think there was also a lot about my own relationship to gender that I needed to like practice saying in order to say, you know, like it was heartbreaking to admit to myself, I might have a completely different understanding of myself, of my gendered self, had I been raised with softness in some ways, right? That there are like thoughts, I'm like, you know, as I read more trans literature, as I'm like, you just talk about stuff, I'm like, ooh, there was a girl, and I talk about her a lot in poems, but there's this girl that I killed inside of me that I murdered for the food and the caretaking, right? In order to receive this love still, she can't be alive, right? And I think that's why I think like non-binariness has been such a lovely space to allow her to flourish a little bit more, right? And I think it's a journey. You know, right now I'm giving like, you know, stud boy cousin, but you know, there's been femmer representations of the self. I was actually just talking the other day amongst like other like, you know, sort of gender in the middle and beyond folks about like just like how the world treats you when you're in that femmer representation. Anyways, that's a sidetrack. So there was just a lot with myself and with my gender and that history that I had to work out. But also from the poetry side, I say that I didn't have a patience. I was leaving the spoken word tradition, which has a very natural relationship to adrenaline, and I think to a particular type of poetics that is seeking climax, that is seeking a peak, right? And I think this poem, I had to learn how to be a quieter poet, to not rush towards that peak, but rather, right, what does a poem look like? This isn't the best example because there are clear stakes in the poem, but I don't know, just like what happens when you allow, I don't know, I like like in the backdraft version, I feel like I'm talking around it. So like the first version of the poem I ever wrote was like way too celebratory. It was like, I'm dancing on my grandma's grave, ooh yeah, we free. And it was just like, Negro what? I beg your African-American pardon. You are not about to dance on your grandmother's grave. You know, but like, it was just like celebratory, the self, you know, and it was just a mess. And so I think I had to find, it's weird because I look back on that poem and like I see that as even in my poetics, my relationship to the lyric. I see that as a real marker of a new territory of the voice for myself that was leaning towards image. I mean, there's still like that confessionalism that's there. I don't know, but there's a different negotiation with the lyric that I'm having a tough time voicing right now. Maybe one of my historians will do a better job. But I needed a new voice in order to talk about that. I needed tools that weren't as sharp and buoyant. I think maybe in terms of the rhythm. Is that what I mean to say right now, Danez? You're having a new thought. I don't know if this makes sense. But something had to change. I had to pick up some new tools to write that poem.
I love that you brought up the spoken word, and I know this has been talked about ad nauseum, but recently Ariana Brown posted on Instagram last month a collection of poets talking about spoken word and slam, and you had this incredible quote that I wanted to bring up tonight, and you said, "Whatever divide we feel between spoken word and the page is bullshit." I wonder what it is about the ability to read a poem out loud that scares some of the gatekeepers of the page world. Right? I deserve some claps. More, yeah. But again, I know you talked about this ad nauseum, but I just thought it was an incredible quote that just calls it what it is, which is bullshit, and it's such classism, in my opinion. But I just wanted to know if you had an extension of that, or are you thinking about it differently now? I know that you've addressed it so many times, but
I think it's still bullshit. I think it's especially bullshit because poetry is newly a like written and read form, right? And like we just got literate. If it was like if we go back, not even 100 years, 100 years, it's questionable about like how many of us in here really can read real good, right? So the idea of the literate society is just new. But also, if I still don't know what exactly makes a poem, but I do know that poetry, unlike fiction and nonfiction and other forms of writing, poetry has an allegiance to music that I think is undeniable in a way that there's some real fun to read, real horrible sounding novels out there, Like, you can tell there are novelists who love the story but do not love the sound that language makes, right? And I think what makes a poet is not just what we say in the poems, but it is the saying, right? We are all musicians in a way, right? We are the word, there's rhythm, there's notes, oh my God, there's so much. We're all failed songwriters, right? I mean, oh my God, if I could sing, y'all would never see me in here. Oh my God, you better come to Boston and see me on a stage somewhere at I was about to say like the Logan, where do they sing? That's the airport. Where do they sing in Boston? Wherever they sing at in Boston, that's where I'd be. Yeah, but so it is that musicality of it, right? And I think anybody who is scared to read their poems out loud is scared that we're gonna find out your poems don't sing. You ain't got no flow, right? So, and the quote I always pull from is by the great Angel Nafis, who I think at one point said, you can call me spoken word, slam poetry, hip hop poetry, whatever makes you feel better, that nobody falls asleep when I read a poem. And I like that because it throws, it's a little mark in the sand or whatever the people say. Is that a saying? Whatever. But yeah, so I like that a little bit, right? So, and I think it goes both ways. I think there are like gatekeepers of like academic, whatever you want to say, poetry. I kind of hate that word too. What is academic poetry besides poetry by somebody with a tenure track job, or that really wants one? But like eventually somebody's gonna hear your poems, they'll sing. And I think that also, privileges the spoken word, but I do think one of the most incriminating pieces of advice that I ever got when I was 19 years old. Ahmad Johnson, my beloved teacher at Wisconsin.
Love him.
We love Ahmad. Pulled me to the side and told little spoken word Danez, are your poems only going to be good when you're around to read them? Woo! Fucked me up. And I got real good after that. I started investigating what could the page do, but it wasn't about leaving the oration of the poem behind, right? It was like, no, how am I, when the text is great, like that can only make the oration that much better, right? And what Ahmad was saying to me was, the oration is awesome. You know how to read anything, right? That's like the type of person, everybody's got like a couple people who's like, I could listen to her read the phone book, right? They're just so good at saying the stuff. And I think there are a lot of spoken word artists who get by on that, right? Who get by on that, like, ooh, girl, read me the McDonald's menu. I could sit here all night and I'd probably be ready to start the revolution once you got to number 7, But, but I think that is, so both come with their weak point, right? But I think the best poets, my favorite poets, are so amazing when you have that private moment of engagement with the book or with the poem, however it's coming to you, and when they read it out loud, it doesn't dead your experience. I've heard some people horrible where it's just like, oh my God, I love the voice in my head so much better than yours. But there are some people where what it should do, it should lift the poem to another place when you read it out loud. And to me, I feel like I'm borrowing this from Nate Marshall. That's who I see in my head saying this, but something about the reading of a poem from poet to audience, that to me, I agree with Nate, like completes the ritual of the poem, right? That is the full expression of what like the art of poetry is. The poet writing it and now delivering it in this way. Woo! Love it.
Oh, I love that from Nate, the complete the ritual. It's beautiful. Patricia Smith was just here last semester, so we got to experience that, not only reading that on the page and feeling that, but to see her, like you said, like take flight with us. It was incredible. Okay, so I want to talk about Bluff. I was so shocked when I got to this page. There's a giant QR code. I was like, what, Danez? I loved it, and I was really interested. So, when I got my phone, scanned it, and I saw that you had a poem, Metro, that couldn't fit on the page, which is something I'm really interested in thinking about, especially since I've had to do a lot of negotiations with graphic designers on what can and cannot fit on the page. Oftentimes you're teaching them how to lineate your work. But then also you have 28 pages of what you call your B-sides, of poems that didn't make it into the collection. And I thought it was so incredible that you made space for like the scaffolding of the book. And so I have like a 2-part question. Can you talk about the editorial process and making that kind of innovative decision? Because I've never encountered that before. And I also know you're inspired by Jonah Mixon Webster, so I don't know if there was a cross-pollination there. And then the second part was, I love that you made space where it couldn't fit. And so I know it's really hard for my students sometimes to figure out like what should or shouldn't stay in a line, or what should or shouldn't stay with a poem. And how do you make that decision to kind of reimagine maybe a poem that's not quite working or doesn't make it in the book? And I love that you still made space for like, how do you, I hate the term kill your darlings, but I feel like you snuggled your darlings.
You got to sit them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you snuggled them still in the book.
Yeah, smuggled them, but they ate at the other table, Like, the book is sort of like, these are my beautiful children, and these are the others. Okay, so process. Well, let's just start. Okay, so let's start with Metro. So Jonah Mixon Webster is an incredible poet and friend of mine. And so he wrote this poem that had these big ass numbers all in it, and I was like, I'm gonna write me a poem with big ass numbers. And so I wrote this poem called Metro, which has these large numbers that are representative of the area codes in the Twin Cities metro area. And then in each area code is like a little story that happened in there in my life. And so I'm sitting over here in the Microsoft Word version of the book going like, ooh, this is great, you know, but I'm also thinking about like, I have to like scroll really far or like zoom really far in to read some of these passages. And so the like physical thing was like, in the book, this poem is quote unquote too big, meaning that like some of the smaller print would be illegible. So I was like, okay, what do we do? Let's get a QR code, maybe, and get in the book that way. I learned that day QR codes cost money. What? That's crazy. They seem like they should be so free. It's like a thing that was made up in like 2013. Why does it cost money? So I was like, cool, if I'm gonna put a QR code in the book, that's like $300 for the rest of my life every year. To like on this little, if you know a cheaper one, holler. We'll gladly reprint. But anyway, so I was like, cool, we got this. I was like, if I'm gonna be paying $300, just from a very like cost concern, I was like, if I'm pay $300 every year to put a QR code in my book, we're gonna have to put more than one poem in this goddamn QR code. I'm gonna get my goddamn money's worth. So I was like, what else can I put in here? Let's put these guys. And so I had already been editing the book, and like usually I think when I write a book, I think like you write too much and then you pick the best of. And the problem I had writing Bluff was that even though it was like real heavy and like real like I hate poetry, all this stuff I was writing in the book, I fucking loved every poem. I really wish I had a less of an ego when I was writing that book, but every time I finished writing something, I was like, that goes in the book. And so we just had like 170 pages of me like having a good time, and that's way too much poetry. And so I was like, well, there's a couple of poems that I had to cut that even though and the reason why they were cut is that I think most of the time I cut a poem from a collection because I feel like the work that is doing, that poem itself is doing, is being done successfully elsewhere in the book, right? So it's sort of like, who is carrying the mantle of like this particular critique or like this particular idea that the book wants to have in there? And it's like, okay, I read through the book and I'm like, here's 2 poems that do that. We don't really need this third one that's also doing that. It's kind of overkill, right? And so I had all these poems that I think their energy had definitely led the book to where it was. But it's like there are things you need to build a house that are not part of the final product, right? So they were gone. And then once I had this $300 commitment to put in this big ass poem in this book, I was like, cool. Well, maybe it'd be fun to show a little bit of like what the making of this book was. You can imagine where these poems went. And the stupid part is I put like a good 10 of those poems in my next book. Just as I was like, oh, now they're useful for this. But what I said, what's the useful part for students? I call poems like that, I call them bay leaf poems, because when you're cooking, if you put in a bay leaf, you don't eat the bay leaf. I still don't know what a bay leaf does necessarily, but I know that if you make the soup, you put the bay leaf in there and then you take it out. And apparently it adds a part of the flavor that is necessary. And so I think there are a lot of pieces that we make like that, right? That you might have a bay leaf poem, right? A poem that helps you figure out what the book or the chapbook is doing, but that the book itself might evolve past its need for, right? Yeah. And that doesn't make them worthless, but they were there to guide you through the flavor and figure out where you're going next.
Yeah, and I think even on a granular level, I think you can have certain lines within a poem that are that kind of scaffolding that doesn't need to stay there in the final revision. Mm-hmm. So my students are in here taking notes. You're hearing this for your final writing portfolios. I think I have time for one more question. I really wanted to sneak this one in here. I wanted to talk about the role of self-implication and complicity in your work, especially with Bluff. I was just so blown away. And it made me think about this line from Natasha Trethewey that I'm obsessed with. I think about it often from her poem, Elegy. It's about a speaker that is fishing with the father, and the speaker says, I can tell you now that I tried to take it all in, record it for an elegy I'd write one day. When the time came, your daughter, I was that ruthless. I was that ruthless. And it made me think about your poem, Less Hope, where you start the poem apologies. I was part of the Joy, line break, industrial complex, told them where their bodies were, miracles, and they ate it up, sold someday, made money off soon and now. And then later in the poem, quote, we wanted to stop being killed, and they thanked me for beauty, and pitifully, I loved them. I thanked them. I took the awards and cashed the checks. Then one more line that I thought was incredible. I wrote a book, edited my war cries down to prayers. So I want to know, what is your relationship to self-implication in your work, and how do you reckon and reimagine and protect your sanity and sense of true, hard-won well-being as a successful writer, but especially a writer that is often out on the road, on book tour, which kind of flings you into the marketplace, right? How do you toggle and care for that negotiation against all this tragedy and endless terror and genocide and wars? I just was so impressed with how you made space for that in the book in a way that I haven't seen before, and so I just wanted to kind of end there with my last question.
Yeah. I mean, I think the simplest way to say it might be that thing about, like, if I'm pointing at you, I got all these other fingers pointing back at me, and I think poetry that only does the pointing, right? It never does the pointing back. I wonder, I mean, not even just poetry, but like any type of critique. I think, like, you know, I'm not interested even in nonfiction, right, that just says, like, everyone else in the world is bad, right? Like, that kind of feels flat to me. But if the critique is the world is bad and this is how we are a part of that badness, and how we can maybe recalculate ourselves away from being useful to that badness, that's interesting and that's useful, I think, to the audience as well, right? And so I think the self-implication for me, I mean, I think I needed to do it. I often call this book my couples therapy with poetry. We had been together for a real long time. I'm writing poetry at this point in my life since I was 14 years old. And I had been writing all this poetry, did all this touring. I published 3 poetry books in 5 years. And I think I was just like, that was a lot, babe. We need to talk about if we still like each other. And so I had to do some of that self-implication just to really figure out my new why for poetry. And I thought, well, what's better than, you know, having a lot of self-reflection than making it rhyme and then selling it. No, but I wanted to save somebody time. You know, I think that was really where a lot of the self-implication came from, was that I wanted, when I'm thinking about like who the book is going to be useful for beyond myself, I was like, man, there's got to be some younger poet out there who maybe is asking themselves similar questions, and it was feeling this, I think, very unfair guilt about what it means to be a artist who has real hopes and dreams for the world, but also starts to depend on that same like capitalist society for like bread and butter, right? I think that it really fucked me up. In that poem, the Less Hope poem, right? It really did mess me up to go from like writing poems that had real hopes, dreams, laments, grief, real rage. And I think it's also a thing of like, do you focus on the positive and negative? Like on the positive end, I did see my poems becoming really useful to people who were teaching and who were organizing. I thought that was beautiful. But it was just like, stop killing us. Would you like some money to come say stop killing us in Western Massachusetts? And so that calculus really fucked me up. And I just didn't feel like I had seen somebody say that out loud before. And so I think I just wanted to like invite other people to be like, I have said this out loud. I also know that I'm not tripping about this now. So maybe that can start a conversation for somebody else, maybe save somebody else some time or some loneliness when having those same thoughts. I also think, I mean, you mentioned like protecting mental health. My mental health was horrible. Coming out of COVID, I think coming out of the uprising in Minneapolis was so beautiful and heartbreaking and disappointing and hopeful all at the same time, that I had so many feelings coming out of there. But then, like, this is like Poe biz. I mean, maybe I won't get too far into it, but like, I had like a friend who like made a whole shaboing about like, I don't know, about like how dare you poets be published. And it was just like this, I don't know, I was doing a lot of mental calculus around what it meant to have a career, right? What it meant to, survive under or within a system that you would rather do away with. And so I wanted to write something that wasn't just like shame, 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 shame. All of you should have shame. Or wasn't just like, let's burn it down. But like, what does it really felt like to live and breathe within this thing as well? And how do we, I wanted to prove how powerful poetry was to myself, right? And so I had to take it and myself as the poet through the ringer, right? So really that self-implication was a lot of exfoliation. And I think I found something truer underneath. I mean, I always say, I'll point to this. I know this is our last question. So I think to me, I wrote, this book is what, 140 some pages of poems? Far too many poems. Never again. But I think what I hoped for can all be summarized in like these last couple of lines in this poem. So this is from the poem Ars Poetica, which is on page 119. And the end of the poem reads, "Dear reader, whenever you are reading this is the future to me, which means tomorrow is still coming, which means today still lives, which means there is still time for beautiful, urgent change, which means there is still time to make more alive, which means there is still poetry." And to me, that is like all that self-implication, all that guilt, all that rage was just to get to a place where I could say to myself soberly, honestly, powerfully that that this art that I've dedicated my life to still has purpose, and to really believe that. And so, yeah, take it back there.
Well, I just want to say to you personally, poet to poet, that you definitely saved me time. And I definitely have had those moments back in the hotel room, staring at the corner of the wall, questioning lots of things. So I just, from me to you, thank you for that poem in particular. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all the permission that you give me, that you give all of us. Thank you for ending with the snippet of that poem. This has been so incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank
Danez
you.
Smith.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank y'all. Woo! All right.
Sign some books. Danez will be up here at the purple table.
Is the book signing right there? That's incredible. Y'all put it right in front. All right. Y'all can start lining up. I'm going to go use the bathroom because I've been on stage for an hour. And so I'll meet y'all at the signing table in a second. See y'all.